Welcome back to the ZERT Coffee and Chaos Podcast, the show where we talk about anything and everything relating to what it means to be a survivalist and a prepared individual in today's society. I'm your host, Chris Bartigone, ZP002. Back with me on the show today is my co-host, Jamie Franks. Jamie, as always, welcome back to the show, my man.
Thank you. I think you were about to say that I was on the coast, and I mean, I guess you're correct about that.
Coast. Sure, coast. I had toast for breakfast, and we're going to have roast for dinner. How's that? Boom. I'm Dr. Seuss. Anyway, it is, we're actually recording on a Thursday, and this show will likely drop next week. We were going to try and get this one out because it seems to be a hot topic as of late. And we will get into that just here in a few seconds. We're going to do something a little bit different this show. We usually make fun of the channels out there that do this, but we're going to do this, and I'll come back to that in a second. Firstly, I want to get all of the cool announcements out of the way. So thank you all for being here and for continuing to support the ZERT YouTube channels, whether it's the dedicated podcast channel that we have, which is a ZERT Coffee and Chaos, or the regular ZERT channel that has all of the obviously product reviews and informative stuff out there. If you're not aware of it, we drop our show every Thursday on Apple and Spotify and any place else that picks up podcasts. And so if you haven't already gone over and listened to the show, please head over there and do that. And then we drop the video version of this a week afterwards normally. And then we drop some other video shorts and put it up on all the social media platforms. So that's it for where you can find the show and when you can find the show. And again, this show is sponsored by MedTac International. Head over to tactical-medicine.com for any of your medical needs. They carry everything from boo-boo kits to IFAKs to full stop the bleed kits to plate carriers and helmets, and they cover a wide variety of things. So head over there. ZERT members do get a discount over on their website. So head over and tell them that we sent you. All right.
I think I'm going to have to head over there because I was having a discussion with my daughter recently, and I'm like, hey, if I'm not home and you like cut your hand, do you know where to find the kit for that? And she's like, no. So I might have to head over there and get a kit that I can just like mount on the wall in my kitchen or something.
Yeah, those are great. You know, I never had one mounted in the warehouse, but I had one that was just always accessible. And, you know, I've kind of taken that and what you always run out of first is the Band-Aids, right? You always run out of Band-Aids before you run out of everything else, like the gauze pads and the sterile pads, and it's great. And I got to tell you, I went, and this was before MedTac came on board, and I don't know if they would have this stuff, and I don't know if that's a good spot to go, but you can go on to Amazon and buy like the industrial sleeves of Band-Aids and get like 5,000 Band-Aids. Like I've got enough Band-Aids to last the rest of my life. But
yeah, that's funny you say that, because like I think it was about a year ago, I went on Amazon and I guess I accidentally didn't pay attention to what I was buying. And yeah, I got like the macro pack of Band-Aids where it's like, it's a big box, and within the big box is like 12 or 15 smaller boxes with all the different sizes and shapes.
Oh,
yeah. So yeah, I've got 10,000 Band-Aids now. So
I gotta tell you though, I'm kind of like, I kind of have like a little crush on Band-Aids. I love Band-Aids. I mean, I don't have to use them often, but I love having the right kind of Band-Aid for any situation. So I can't remember, it was maybe a couple of years back, I wore a pair of shoes, and those shoes, dress shoes, they just cut up the back of my ankle. And Band-Aid actually, what's that?
So that's not ideal.
No. And Band-Aid makes those like, they're like Achilles heel Band-Aids, and they're ovals, and you put them on and they're very rubbery, and they're supposed to have
Band-Aids.
Blister Band-Aids. Exactly. And those things are great. They stay on forever, by the way, forever. It's almost like second skin.
And also, like for a person like me that's in the water a lot, those are really great for not coming off in the water too.
Yeah. So, and what was awesome is they have like this little plastic travel case, and I got a few of those, and I keep them, I keep them around, like for, in like my toiletries bag when I travel. I mean, that's the
Mhm.
worst. But yeah, obviously, you can get the right kind of boo-boo kit pouch, if you will, or medical pouch over at MedTac International, and then you can always load it up with other stuff. I mean, I've got enough Band-Aids to last you, me, and 3 more people for the next however many cuts. But anything else you need, you can pick up over there, and make sure that you know how to use it and know when to use it. So, um, all right. Well, coincidentally, if you carry this firearm, you may need to use it often.
Oh,
Oh,
wah,
God.
wah.
Wah, wah. All right, guys, listen, what we're going to get into today, and this is what I was saying about, we normally make fun of other channels for doing this. Like, there's a couple of channels out there are great. And I mean, they love to just do a video about another guy doing a video about another guy's original post. And so, you get GBRS out there making a video about the SIG, and then you've got 3 other guys making a video about the one guy doing a video. It's obnoxious. So if you have been living under a rock and you have not heard about the SIG P320, it's I don't know, it's pretty popular in the news today. And I say that because, dude, there was even a news channel that did a little bit on this firearm. I saw
Wow.
it. Yeah, it was
That's
on
I did not know that,
YouTube.
and I
Yeah,
mean, it may have been a small news story on some local
yeah.
news market or whatever, but that's actually a pretty big deal that this is starting to get enough traction to land on your local evening news. That's not a small, even though the story
No,
may have been small, that's not a small
right.
development. Like,
And it was about police departments, where police officers were getting injured, and they had body cam, like they had a body cam footage of an officer on the ground, and they were performing medical aid to his leg, to his lower extremity, and the guy, and he's just like, it just went off. And you've obviously, we've seen some of these videos out there. um I guess they're all doctored and fake, because SIG says that this cannot happen, which is
well,
just absolute trash. But
so
we're going to get into it.
yeah, and
Um,
just to back up a step, I will give us an alibi on this video is basically commenting off of another very specific video, but I'll give us an alibi on that
right.
because um ever since SIG's famous "It Ends Today" post, they have not really given any interviews or any
Correct.
public statements really to address it since then. So we are commenting on basically the only single point of reference for this thing. So I know, like, the Anti-Hero podcast will come out with something, and then Valhalla VFT will release a video responding to the
Yeah.
Anti-Hero video, and then Green Beret Chronicles will release his reaction to Valhalla's reaction to the anti. And it's like we're not doing that, but
Yeah.
unfortunately, the the podcast we're going to reference for now is the single point of reference for this
Yeah.
information, because SIG has not, they have been
Yeah.
very tight on
Yeah.
this. So
And just to kind of piggyback on that a little bit more, um, there was a comment, I believe, or it was an Instagram post about Garand Thumb, saying that he acquired one of the alleged P320s that had an uncommanded discharge, uncommanded discharge, and they were going to do extensive testing.
yeah,
On Monday, I spoke to Paul, and he mentioned that there was a lot of talk out there, and he had said something about the video, and then I think you sent me the link about this video. And for those of you that don't know what we're talking about, I'll just put it out there now. So Tim from Military Arms Channel, which is a very big channel here on YouTube. They've got 1.5 million people that are watching his channel. I
and
did a roundtable with Tim on YouTube years and years and years ago. It was a bunch of us that kind of went on and talked about the state of the industry after after Trump's first inauguration and after the bump stock ban. So I mean, I've had I've been on a panel with this guy before, and I always knew him to be, just straight shooter. So anyway, video drops and it says SIG breaks the silence, the P320 interview. And he is doing an interview at SIG with Phil Strader, who is I think he's the VP of communications is what I saw, but I believe he was former law enforcement.
Yeah, former law enforcement, and like I just know him because he was part of like kind of that OG crew of back in the day competitive shooters, like with like Mike Voigt and Bruce Pyatt and Jerry Mikulek, like he and Rob Latham, like he's part of that old guard of like the OG competitive shooters back from the 90s.
Okay. So yeah, so it's a 58-minute video, and I encourage everybody who will watch this, who hasn't seen that, to go watch that and then come back to this.
So one more that you did mention Grand Thumb. So before we get too far away from that, I wanted to mention this other thing because I'm not sure there's a social media channel, a social media account, and a corresponding YouTube channel it's called SIG Armorer.
Yes.
I am confused as to whether or not this person is actually affiliated with SIG or not. Because I mean, I could make my YouTube channel be SIG Shooter 6969, and that doesn't mean I'm official. But so apparently he has a big video that's going to drop soon, where he claims that he has identified what actually the problem is with the P320 and how to fix it.
Right.
And he was going to release that this past Monday. But then he released a video saying that some new information had come to light, and he wants to review that prior to releasing his intended video. And that is leading some people to say that like SIG got to him and they are quieting, they're silencing him.
Yep. I mean, who knows, maybe, but he's been mentioned by Ben Stoger or Stoger. I don't know how you pronounce his last name, so don't come at me in the comments, but he has been mentioned by Ben a couple of times, and Ben is always referenced in any of these videos or posts that come out because he has been a big voice for and against this entire situation, and he usually calls it out. But so he said he went back and forth with that SIG Armorer guy, and yeah, I did see that video where he says he had a fix and then he is holding off because he's doing more research.
Yeah,
who knows? There's been two videos in the last couple of weeks that obviously have made their rounds on the internet. The GBRS guys, I met and talked to DJ. He seems like a stand-up dude, but I got to tell you, after watching his video, I was a little let down. I mean, I'm as disappointed in what. Hold on, let me just finish.
Okay,
I'm as disappointed in what he did as I am in SIG as to what they're doing. So,
I've never met DJ, and I do not get the impression that he's a stand-up guy. I think he's one of those guys that he's got bigger muscles and screams louder than you do. So, what he says goes. And if he wants to fight me, that's fine. I'm sure I'll lose, and I'm sure he can bench press more than I can. But that video, the GBRS video of the SIG P320, I will go on record right now and say that I believe that video to be 100% completely fabricated.
Of course.
I've been a firearms instructor. I've been teaching civilians for 11 years, and I've been a firearms instructor in the military for 14 years. And I'm sorry, civilians for 12 years, in the military for 14 years. I have never, ever, 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 not one single time ever seen a person stick their whole big fat finger all the way inside the holster and then pull the trigger on reholstering. Like, number one, that would hurt if you did
hurt so much, dude. Like for this video, just to put a pin in it where you just said it, for this video today, because I knew this was going to come up, I took my Safariland holster, that is the one that's in question, for my M&P.
It's not in question. Let's be clear.
The one that's in the one that's in question on the video. Yeah. Right. I took it for my M&P for my Glock, I don't know if I have one for the SIG, but I took them for both. There is absolutely no way I can get my finger in that firearm without really destroying my finger. Like the moment it would happen, you would stop because you would be like, holy shit, that's a lot of pain. So go ahead. There's no way.
And also it would cost $10,000 to take one of his classes if he had a class of 12 people and had a high definition camera pointed at every shooter for every drill, and they just happened to catch this on 4K high definition video of this alleged experienced police officer sticking his entire fucking finger inside the holster when he was reholstering, and then claimed he didn't know that he did it. Like that's
right.
like
now
sorry,
now,
hashtag sorry, not sorry. That's complete bullshit. It's completely made up. That whole thing is completely fabricated, including the little video. And if DJ Shipley wants to fight me, it's fine. I'll go practice falling down. But
now I didn't comment. I watched that video and I was just like, dude, bad luck. And then the Valhalla VFT dude came out and he did a video talking about that video. And, that guy was like kind of defending what they were saying. And I was just like, yeah, no, I made a comment and I basically said, I question everything that's happening here. Like, if that actually, based off of what you said, if you were videoing this guy or videoing the entire line, show the whole video.
Right.
Don't crop
exactly.
out everything and zoom in to the part that you need to make your point. Bad look, dude. Bad look. So that being said, so that video is out there. And then this video that we're going to play while we're talking about it is out there. And again, I made a comment on this video.
Yeah.
You made a comment too, and I made one, and it's weird. Like mine had nothing. I mean, I put it out there very generic. Like if the people at SIG that C-suite group thought that this video was going to magically make the internet go, oh, okay, SIG, we like you again. They were dead fucking wrong.
No, so I don't know what you wanted to get into first, but like you mentioned the comment section. I made a comment, and I mean the last time I looked at my comment, it had a couple of hundred likes, I think, and then upwards of 30 some comments, replies to my comment. Right. But one of the things that I kind of want to make clear from the beginning, as it concerns like the YouTube comments and people's comments in general, is this is something I've kind of been screaming about for the last 15 years is I think most people have lost the ability to live in the middle, and we talk about that a lot as it pertains to being a prepared individual in general, with all these different things that we talk about with survival skills and primitive skills and bug out bags and your bug out plan and with firearms training and all these different things. It all ties in that, like, with people losing the ability to live in the middle, because, like, just to give a super generic basic example, if you know somebody now that goes and watches a movie and you ask them how it was, they either tell you that it was the best movie they've ever seen or it was the biggest piece of shit ever made. Like there's rarely is there anything in the middle. And this, like I said, this is something I've been complaining about for a decade. Like, people have lost the ability to live in the middle, and especially as it pertains to the P320. Again, I'll go on record and I'll say I do believe that the truth is somewhere in the middle, but SIG has painted themselves into the corner way on this side, where now they with their it ends today's statement and with this follow-on video, they've given themselves absolutely no wiggle room. And there's actually examples of that in the video that I'm going to talk about as we get to it. But then there's all the people on the other side that I guess because at some point they handed SIG $600 of their dollars for this pistol. Now all these white knights have to be in the comments and like and say that anybody that thinks there's anything wrong with the P320 is a sheep and a this and a that. And it's like, there's nothing wrong with this gun. I can tell you that it's not nothing. So SIG is wrong, but it's all like there could have been an instance where SIG is like, we're looking into this. We'll get back to you.
Of course.
Or hey, we think it's this thing. We're still testing, but like SIG is like, there is no problem. And then all these people white knighting for SIG saying there is no problem. And then all these people that pretend like the SIG in your holster is a hand grenade that's going to blow your leg off. Like none of those things are true. And so
right. But you're going to
I would
get that.
encourage everybody to kind of live in the middle or look into the middle a little bit here. And I'll talk
Right.
more about that as we go.
But you're going to get that no matter what, right? I mean, we've talked about 50 Shades of Grenades, Tim Kennedy, and there's the people that are like, no matter what you tell these guys, they're always going to think that he is the, most amazing human on the face of the earth. You get the guys who you either love SIG, you hate SIG. Now, my thing, and you and I have talked, hold on, let me get this. Yep. You and I have talked about this numerous times. The people, I would say 97% of the people that are shitting on SIG in the comment section of every post have never owned a SIG.
You're 100% correct. I do think that's correct. And I also think, because this comes into play also, is that, there's quote unquote over 3.5 million P320s, out in circulation. I would probably say 99% of people that own a P320 are completely oblivious to this whole situation. Like that, really, like the people who are in the know on this, except you said it is starting to make its way into the local news, and that's why I said that's not a small thing. But people that are really paying attention to this are the people like us that kind of live in this space. But as it pertains to this specific situation and what I'm talking about, where there seems to be no middle ground, or like even Phil Strader in this video, like he says he makes a lot of bold absolute statements. And like one example is there should never be any time when somebody is rushing to get their gun back in the holster. Well, that's not true. Like as a firearms instructor, I would say, as a general rule of thumb, you should draw your gun out of your holster as fast as you possibly can. And yes, you should not be quick to break down the gun and reholster. Like in my classes, I always say nobody ever won a gunfight by going back to the holster. But to make an absolute statement that there should never be any circumstance where anybody ever should be going. If you're a police officer and you have drawn your firearm, but now the situation has changed and now you need to de-escalate to a less lethal, you do need to reholster your firearm quickly and quickly transition to your taser or whatever, or OC spray or whatever it's going to be. So that's just one example that Phil Strader in this video speaks in a lot of absolutes that I would say are definitely not.
Yeah. And I can tell you that I definitely go faster I reholster faster when I'm OWB than I am when I'm appendix carrying. You are definitely looking and making sure you go back in slow. I don't want to discharge anything down there. But all right, so what we're gonna
pinch myself. But
that too. All right, so like I said, this video, and we're gonna bring some of it in right now. It starts at it starts really getting into the nitty gritty around 15 minutes in. So we're going to share the screen here and show you what we're doing here. I don't know if you're seeing all of that, but here we are. So, and from here we can kind of control it. So you'll hear, this is right about when they're getting into what's going on. So we'll play a little bit of it and then we'll come back and hit some points.
We talked about before, we increased the drop height another foot, and we increased our orientations another 14. So we now drop, as we mentioned, 26 orientations at a higher drop than opposed to 6 or 7 from our competitors. So
and stick around, guys, because we will do our own drop tests in this video.
So if anybody is wondering, and you know what, I before I ask, could you hear that clearly?
I could hear it. It's I couldn't hear it as clearly as I can hear you, but I could hear it clear enough to understand it.
Okay, that's interesting. So we're trying, like I said, guys, we're trying something new here, and this wasn't exactly the way that I wanted to do this, but we're technology challenge it sometimes. But anyway, the first thing that he's sitting here talking about is this the drop test, which, by the way, I'm sorry, this was SIG's first debacle when it came to this firearm.
Correct. So,
Go ahead.
Yeah, so and I'm actually kind of glad they opened up with that, because the drop safety issue with the P320 was a very real issue. That was something that was able to be replicated. There's the infamous video. I've seen it a million times. I couldn't tell you who made it, where the guy's like at the shooting range, and he like places the P320 against the edge of the workbench and taps it with a mallet, and he is able to make it go off repeatedly, like repeatedly.
Right.
He is able to repeat that condition on command repeatedly. And so that was a very real issue with this firearm, and SIG owned up to it, and they went back and they fixed it. And yes, now I believe, to the best of my knowledge, the drop safety issue is not an issue anymore, and it's certainly not the issue. But that's a perfect example of SIG being able to go, yeah, guys, our bad. This is something that's not right. We're going to fix it. And they did, as far as I know. And so again, with one of the more interesting points that I make in defense of SIG in this video, in an honest effort to try to live in the middle, is I do find it interesting that so far with this uncommanded discharge issue, I do find it interesting that unless the SIG Armorer guy is going to come out with something revolutionary, nobody has been able to replicate this uncommanded discharge thing in a controlled environment. So I do find that interesting in SIG's defense. But
okay. So I obviously I was able to get this. We're going to try to do this a different way, so hopefully the sound comes out a little bit better. I'm assuming that you were able to hear that
yeah,
that a little bit better there, right?
Yeah.
All right. So let's see. Now, again, we're trying to do all of this here.
Yeah. Right. And I noticed when I opened up my P320, or I'm sorry, my M17.
Right.
And I looked inside, there was an additional cut inside of the slide that was through the finish that the Army, or maybe you guys had done for the Army. So my question would be, why did the Army swap out their M17s?
Well, the initial reason was we were upgrading their coatings.
So, and then if everybody is not aware, and hopefully you are, the military adopted the emergence of this pistol, and we're just going to give you a little bit of SIG history here. The P320 was not, it was almost a redo. So the P250 was the first design of this P320. So if you look at the P320 and you go back prior to 2014, that pistol was a P250, and it was a striker fired. I'm sorry, it was a hammer fired. And somebody in the comments has said that that pistol was a debacle. And I'm assuming it was, since it's no longer around.
It was around for such a short time that I was not even really aware of it. I have only become aware of it as it relates to the P320, like in retrospect. But yeah, so the P320, kind of as we know it now, was released in 2014. In 2017, the Army and the Air Force adopted the P320 as the M17 for their service pistol to replace the M9. And then in 2018, the Navy and the Marine Corps adopted the M18. And those two military contracts, it's a $580 million contract with SIG to replace all four service branches service pistols.
Wow. Absolutely insane. So in this video, obviously there are some holsters that are on the table in front of them, and obviously they're doing, and there's also a Glock on the table as well, because he starts to compare it against Glock, which I don't think is a good look.
Bold move, Cotton.
Yeah, bold move. Yeah.
Going back to the M17 just real quick, just to try to be a person of integrity, I found this to be one of the more interesting and honest parts of the video, where he explained, because this is a known thing, that when the first batches of the M17 hit the streets with the Army, they did return a bunch of them to SIG. But I actually I like his explanation of this. I don't find any fault with this, and I do believe this part to be true and honest, that the Army wanted a couple of changes made that are completely unrelated to the current issue, and he does a good job of explaining all that. The only thing that I don't like about it is Tim never presses it, because all the military versions of the pistol and all 3 versions of the P320 that I own, so I'm particularly interested in this, but all the military versions have the manual safety selector,
Right.
and Tim never presses him on does that make a difference or not? Is there, have you guys seen any difference with the pistols that are allegedly having this uncommanded discharge issue with the manual safety? I would like to know that, but then I realized, like, even if Tim had asked him the question, which I think would have been the right thing to do from an integrity standpoint, just so you could say you asked, but I don't think Phil would even be able to answer that, because if he admitted that there was less of a problem with the manual safety selector versions, that would basically be an admission that there was an issue with the non-manual safety selector version. So, and
the other part that really bothers me about this is he was like, this is not a paid video advertisement for SIG. I'm not here to support the brand or basically shit on the brand, but he kind of just lets them get away with whatever they want to say. So go ahead.
Just in general with this video, like Tim is kind of leading the witness. Like, what he should do is ask the question and then sit back and let Phil bullshit through it, which is what he does a lot of the time, and then call him out on the parts that are obviously bullshit, but that's not what he does. And then several times through the video, he goes, "Hey guys, I'm not defending SIG here, guys," and then he'll make a 2-minute soliloquy absolutely in defense of SIG. But
so this is about 14 minutes in, and this is where he starts to ask the questions.
Found a way to actually increase that reliability to get that MRBS number even lower by, I think we added weight to the slide, I want to say, but very small amounts. And of course changes the update,
Bring it up a little bit here.
It was anyone that control.
What was going on with that? And
okay, so
one of the changes we made regarding the function, the actual mechanics of the FCU and how the gun works, there were no changes made. With the guns that were submitted initially to the Army
I think that kind of fed into everything, because I had questions.
Yeah, it was purely coincidental timing. The timing couldn't have been much worse, but it had nothing to do with mechanics or safety or anything. It was literally a finish change, and we were able to make the guns be more reliable with their type of ammo.
Okay, so my next question will lead into what's currently being discussed right now on the internet, and that is the P320 claims being that the gun fires uncommanded. And for folks that don't know what that means, it means without physically pulling the trigger.
Right.
We've seen posts, we've seen videos out there where guns have been claimed to have fired themselves in holsters. I think some of those were in law enforcement circles. One I remember watching, I believe there's an officer doing something in a building and he was kind of bent over and the gun pops.
Montville PD, yes.
Okay. So I've seen that. I'm sure many of the people watching this video have seen that.
Now, this is one of the scarier videos when you slow this thing down. When you slow this down and you look at how close it was to one guy's hand, one guy's foot, 2 different officers, and there was a bunch of people in this room. And what SIG does with this video, I mean, like, these are the parts where I'm just like, you guys are really fucking up. Like, this is a bad look. So Tim has just introduced the first video where the gun goes off. Now, leading up to this, with those holsters and whatnot, I believe, right? He's already discussed that these holsters now, everyone's carrying with lights on their guns, and this pretty famous holster company out there, he starts introducing the doubt.
He doesn't, I don't think he ever uses the word Safariland, but he's obviously talking about Safariland. And one of my other friends brought this up to me recently, and my response to him was that I trust my Safariland holsters much more than I trust executives at SIG. But yeah, it's not an accident that before the interview even begins, he has Safariland holsters laying on the table in front of him. But this is such like a 5-year-old mentality to address, because number one, this is where he kind of starts down the path of, we've investigated ourselves and we found that we did nothing wrong. And then he implies that it's the holster's fault.
Yeah.
And then he implies that Safariland has now made a change to the design of their latest holster to address that, because they realize that their holster is the reason why this is going off. So they have changed their design of their holster. But I'm not going to name their name, but this popular holster manufacturer, they've actually changed the design of their holster to address this. And if there is any truth to that, I think the truth would be that they have changed the design of their holster to make you no longer able to blame them. And if I was Safariland, I would be jumping all over this and be like, I would post a thing that was like, "Dear SIG, stop blaming us for your gun."
Right.
And,
I mean, yeah, it's the light's fault, right? Because if you have a light on your firearm, then you have to get this holster, and it's Key's fault, right? It's not. And it's your fault. It's not.
It's the key. It's the whole. It's because police officers have suddenly found a way to stick their entire finger inside the holster, and they're not
right.
And this is a perfect. And I think Phil even says, well, this issue with the guns going off in the holster, the way this is happening, this would happen with any gun. And that's what my comment was on the YouTube video that got so many replies, is that would have been the perfect time for Tim to ask, yeah, but why is this not happening with other guns? And I do I've seen the video of the guy going into the gun store. He was a police chief or something, and he wanted to look at a new gun, and he took his gun out and put it on the counter, and he was looking at another gun and like fitted in his holster. Then he handed the gun back to the gun counter guy. Then he picks his gun back up, and he was wearing like a North Face fleece jacket, and the little bungee drawstring of his jacket like fell down inside the holster. So when he reholstered his loaded gun, the little bungee cord on his North Face fleece caught the trigger and pulled the trigger and discharged the gun. I do understand that those things are able to happen, but that is not the question that's at hand specifically with all these P320 issues. That it can't be, because it's not like, if it was, because there's enough people that hate Glock that if it was happening, those videos would be all over the place, and they're not. Yeah. It's not happening with Glock, FN.
There's even more people that hate Springfield.
Yeah, that was going to be the next one out of my mouth. Yeah, exactly. And so later on, though, I don't know if you want to skip ahead to this or what, but later on,
I want to get to this part right here.
Okay, go ahead. I'll come back.
Yeah. So come back to that. So here's the video.
What was going on with that? And the result of that is that there are lawsuits out there people are talking about. And so, the nature of the lawsuits, I presume, are related to uncommanded firing, or
that's what a lot of the lawsuits are based on, is the fact that uncommanded firing caused either the gun to fire or caused an injury. So that's what a lot of the claims are. Yes.
Okay. And so what is your response to that? I want to know what your position is on that, and what testing have you done? What investigative stuff have you done, and where are you guys at with that currently?
So I'm glad you asked. So this is the question everyone's been asking. Is first, I can stand here and tell you that the guns cannot fire without a trigger pull.
Okay, right there, right off the bat. What's your stance on this? Well, first off, let me tell you, it can't happen.
It cannot happen.
We just have seen a video. You're about to play a video where it does happen. How are you saying that? And what they do with this video, and again, folks, if you're listening to this podcast, I highly urge you go and watch this when it drops, because they're like, oh, it can't without a trigger pull. You're saying that the cop that's standing next to this guy who's got keys hanging off of a belt that bumps into him for a fraction of a second, the key goes in, magically puts and presses the trigger. You can't say that with 100% certainty.
And so, from a gun armorer standpoint, just to clear up the two, because the most obvious comparison that people have made is this issue with the P320, and then people always try to compare it against the Glock. One major difference that people may not be aware of is that a Glock, the way the Glock mechanism works, is when you insert a magazine, rack the slide, you've loaded the chamber on a Glock. The striker on the Glock is really the striker is not cocked back. It's really at I mean, this is my terminology. It's really at a half cock. Yep. And people complain about the trigger pull on a Glock because when you pull the Glock trigger, the first part of that trigger pull is actually finishing cocking the striker all the way to the rear. And then when the trigger breaks, it releases the striker and contacts the primer and discharges the firearm. The P320, when you insert a magazine, rack the slide, and cock the gun, charge the weapon, on the P320, the striker is all the way cocked back to the rear. So just theoretically speaking, if there were some condition or jostle or movement or impact or whatever that could release the Glock striker, it's not cocked back far enough to impact the primer hard enough to discharge the firearm, but the P320 is. And this is something I've seen presented like several months ago, and I told you about it before. There was evidence presented that, because obviously SIG doesn't make every single piece of the firearm in their factory and then assemble it. They do contract out other, like, certain components of the gun. And I saw a thing that said, like, the little shoe that hangs down on the striker, that some of the strikers that were being made in some factory, instead of them being machined perfectly flat, that there was like some QA issue where some of them were machined with a rounded face on that little striker shoe, and that could lead to it, not having a good purchase and slipping off and discharging or whatever. And I don't know if that's true or not, but I do know the difference between the P320 striker being cocked all the way back and under full tension, and a Glock striker is not. And that's why, back in the day when you would walk into a gun store, there'd be the sign on the wall. I don't know if you remember this, the big silver and black round sign. It said like Glock safe action pistol. That is the Glock quote unquote safe action. And the P320 doesn't have that. So again, I don't know if any of that thing with the curved surface on the striker shoe, I don't know about that, but I do know with the striker being completely cocked back under tension on the P320, there could hypothetically be a reason why that's being released, and then that would cause the pistol to discharge. And then if again, I'm not an expert on the P320 trigger mechanism, but when you actually, because I've also heard that there was initially an issue with the P320, and it had to do with the actual weight of the trigger itself, the actual part of the trigger that you put your finger on. And so if you reholstered the gun fast enough, or that also played into the drop thing, that due to the weight of the trigger, the inertia could actually pull the trigger and disengage the striker and cause the gun to go off. And that was what they fixed. And so then that, of course, leads into my question about whether or not the manual safety works, which, of course, even if they had been able to ask that, they wouldn't have been able to answer it. But so it's very interesting. But yeah, but here they are again saying this cannot happen. And then, like you said, well, okay, well, here's you're literally showing a video of it happening.
And so then we move forward a little bit, and he gets to, I think he's about to talk to the holster part of it right here.
Happened with the Montville PD case. So for me to break that down to make it make sense for you, I've brought a number of guns and holsters out here. And namely, one of our guns, this is actually the Australian defense pistol setup with a light, an optic. And this is one of my personal guns, my Glock 45.
The SIG guy with his personal Glock 45. It's great. Maybe you should just go back. I bet you he carries that, by the way. All right.
These aren't the droids you're looking for.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which, if you're familiar, your viewers aren't familiar with, it's a basically a Glock 19 length slide and a Glock 17 size grip. So it's like a carry Glock 17.
Right.
But they're doing away with all the
like a 19X, but black.
Right. Exactly right.
Not flat darker.
And I've actually added my personal light here. And this is an example of a holster. This is actually an example of a holster I used to carry. It is from a very, very well-known and very reputable holster company, and they're great. And I
Safariland.
Mm-hmm.
I like their products, and I used to carry them all the time. And one of the upgrades that a lot of law enforcement officers are putting on their guns are weapon lights.
Mm-hmm. Here we go. They're introducing the reason this is happening, not the gun. They're introducing the reason why this is happening, right? So we've already brought into the light, the holster company, and now the light, which is a Surefire light. Streamlight's going to be, I mean, it's the same footprint, but here we go.
Obviously, as weapon lights have improved, they've become smaller with the same amount of lumens, but this is a very popular model. This is the Surefire X300. And because of the light and because of how it has to fit in the holster, there's always an opening in the holster that will allow for, the light to fit in it. And this is the right holster. This is before the.
Now, just to be fair, and I do have some holsters that were made for me before I was carrying a weapon mounted light on my Glock, my Smith & Wesson, or my SIG. Those holsters, because they don't have a light, that trigger guard, that trigger area is a little bit more flush to the trigger guard. I
agree.
will say that.
Yep.
But you're talking maybe a half an inch to an inch, maybe, again, without a micrometer.
And you're talking about something that has never, ever been an issue before.
Right. Correct. So here we go.
Days where they have Glock 45s, but you can see it's a Glock 19/23 holster, and it fits in just like so. I'll do one more clear and check just so we don't get beat up on the internet, but clear and safe.
Oh, that's going to happen.
You're going to get beat up on the internet. Don't you worry.
Yeah,
And safe. I know. Oh, trust me.
Right.
Hey, trust me. This is great. So we're going to put the gun in the holster. You can see it locks in.
Is it, Phil? Is it great? I mean, I don't know that you should be making light of this. I don't think it's great. Shut up.
I mean,
Horrible.
I think my Safari holsters are great.
I mean, yeah.
It's perfectly set up for this type of holster. Now, what you will notice is the gap between the body of the trigger or body of the holster and the side of the trigger guard. And
I can get a finger in there.
yeah, finger.
No, you
fingers
can't.
Yeah. Okay. And this is where I'm disappointed and ashamed that he did that. No, you can't.
No, you cannot.
First of all, what monkeying around did you do to that Safari Land that you could get a finger in there?
Well,
Because
and second
Tim's
of
a big
all,
dude.
he demonstrated that he can get a finger in there by not sticking his finger in there. If
Right,
you can
he's
get
like-
a finger in there, big boy, let's see it. But
Right,
you
do
didn't.
it.
You're
Make
full
it
of
go
shit.
click. Make it go, and then that's what he says down the road. He was like, "Oh, it went click." No, no. When he starts jockeying his keys around there, no, you can't. You're a big dude, Tim. No, you can't. I'm sure you have bigger hands than me, and I can't get my finger in there without seriously wincing to the point, and maybe I'm just a pussy, but to the point where I'm like, no, I don't want to do that anymore. So I'm going to remove my finger from the small gap that I can't fit my finger in. But I digress. Let's continue.
It happens. It would be safe to say that, it is quite easy to get a trigger in there and pull it. And I've got big meat hooks, hands.
Now, Jamie, how many
Yes.
years have you been teaching firearms training?
Officially for 14.
Now,
14
in
years.
14 years, how many students have had an ND, a negligent discharge, on your range?
In the Navy, quite a bit. At Active Shooter Defense School, only a few. And
Okay. In those total amount, did any of the circumstances involve a human beings jamming their finger in their holster, causing the firearm to go off?
yeah, so in my experience, all the negligent discharges that I've had on the range, none of them have been holster related at all. It's usually they have cleared the holster and they're going out to the target and they pull the trigger too soon before they intend to, or the opposite of that, where they're coming off the target and their finger is still on the trigger and they're starting to go back towards their holster and they pull the trigger without knowing it. But no, I've never seen one single student ever, military or civilian, that
Right.
inadvertently discharged their gun by jamming their finger inside the holster. I've never seen anything close to that.
And just to take the DeLorean back in time to the GBRS video that we talked about, I also know that video is 1000% doctored. If you look at every other uncommanded discharge video on the internet of this firearm, the reaction for every one of those people that their firearm magically goes off is they jump, they freak out, they're nervous. The video that GBRS magically produced with a director and a production crew and whatnot, the guy never flinches. His body never moves. The round, you do see the round because they slow it down. You see that quick flash, and the dude quickly removes his finger from the trigger, and there's no skip in his step. That's what happens when you're an actor and you're acting. You know what's going to happen.
Well, correct. And then just to add insult to injury, later on in this video on the Military Arms channel, Phil Strader cites that video as evidence that's what the problem is. Like, and
the entire comment section of that video is just talking about how there's shills for SIG. So
correct.
Your theory holds zero weight. But let's continue on with this weird explanation.
But in the case of, let's say, things on officers' belts or seat belts or that kind of thing, or keys, for a key to find a
introduction of evidence B, right? Now he's got keys that he just happened to have there. All right, here we go.
Way in there and to pull the trigger is, it's not impossible, right? It can happen, but just by keep pulling in.
Did you see? I mean, are you kidding me with this shit? Like, he had to stick his key in there, get it to hit the right point, and then like rip it out. And then
it looks like he borrowed he went to Andy and Barney and borrowed the keys to the Mayberry jail to stick in there.
Yeah, exactly. And then right after this, you're going to get the hero of the video. He says to the camera, "It went click, guys." Like,
so up, and it's funny if you watch the video.
It just went click, folks.
Did it? We'll see.
There it is.
So right? This is a good time to point out that Tim does not disagree with Phil one single time in this entire video. That was what my personal comment on this video that I made. That was what I said. I was like, good job, Tim, for doing zero pushback.
Right.
Because I've watched this video twice, and I mean, if you've got time to kill, I would recommend watching it twice. I got more angry the second time I watched it because I start to realize things like that the second time I watch the video. Tim never disagrees with him once and agrees with him 100% of the time.
Right. So I'm gonna make two statements real quick before you go on. First of all, folks, this episode is going to go over an hour. So I apologize for taking up more of your time, but 100% it is going to go over an hour. So stick around. Number two, I don't know if having a podcast and doing YouTube videos makes this channel, you, a journalist. I don't know the textbook definition of a journalist, but a journalist needs to be unbiased. And you've got to call things out when they're bullshit, and you've got to support them when they're not, in my opinion.
You have to call balls and strikes. Like you can't, it's not my intention to turn this into a political discussion at all, but it's like, people that take the stance that every single thing that Joe Biden does is wrong, you're wrong. And if you're the journalist that says every single thing that Joe Biden did was correct, then that's also wrong. Like, because again, the truth lives in the middle. Like, Joe Biden did a few good things. He also did some bad things. You have to call balls and strikes. But for him to be in this video, he literally never disagrees once and agrees with every single thing that Phil Strader says. And in many instances, like, kind of comes to Phil's defense and like adds a little bit more meat to Phil's argument. And the last thing I want to say about this holster thing before we move on to other things that are said in the video is like, this correlation does not equal causation. Like, a basic example of this is ice cream sales increase during the summertime. Drownings also increase during the summertime. Does that mean that people are drowning in ice cream? No, it does not. It's two completely different things that just happen to correlate. Another, like, I don't know if this is a good analogy or not, but it would be like if one out of every 20,000 Toyota Camrys just suddenly started exploding. And then Toyota came out and said, well, we've looked at this and we've figured out that all the cars that have exploded had Goodyear tires on them. Therefore, it's Goodyear's fault. Like, that's not an acceptable answer. That's not that. So yes, while the military does issue Safariland holsters, and I've never been in law enforcement, but I've seen a lot of police officers that have Safariland holsters. So again, just by just playing the odds and the percentages of how many P320s are on duty and how many, agencies issue a Safari Land holster, yeah, a lot of those Toyotas are going to have Goodyear tires, and a lot of these P320s are going to be used in conjunction with a Safari Land holster, but that is not like correlation does not equal causation. This is a complete straw man argument.
And so they do end up calling out Safari Land because they do it right here, and they actually interview Safari Land, or somebody interviews Safari Land at SHOT Show, and they're like, this is why we made it. Okay, great. These claims haven't come out to light until now on the internet, right?
It can happen, but just by keep pulling up, and it's funny if you watch the video.
It just it went click, folks.
Did it? Well, let's see. Well, there's a trigger.
Yeah, you can see it trigger to the rear.
Oh,
so
yeah, look at that.
It's not impossible for that to happen. Of course, the larger the opening of the holster is compared to the width of the trigger guard, the chance of that happening go up.
And look how much effort it took.
The biggest part of this that's kind of revolutionary is right here. This little floppy piece on the bottom, Cytrel, and what this material does is it blocks finger ingress.
Right.
We have incidents.
So
all
here's
the time
where they're
someone is
talking
wearing a
about
holster, especially on duty.
Safari Land
There's an object,
changing
maybe
this
it's a
thing.
seatbelt
I don't
buckle,
know. I
it's a
haven't
finger.
seen this Safari
It's
Land
in
holster.
between the sidewall of the holster and the gun itself. Doing so, that runs the risk with all of these guns like the Glocks.
Sure.
They're sitting there with no external safety on.
Right.
I mean, it's wild that this dude, and I don't know, I mean, I can't imagine that this is a guy at Safari Land that works at Safari Land. It looks like he's straight off of a walkabout in Australia.
He looks like he's straight out of he's the ranger from Yogi the Bear.
I mean, it's just wild that he chose Glock to reference there, but okay. So anyway, they came out with this new holster, but here's the part that I love. And I'm glad that here's where they're, again, establishing evidence, right? So here's SIG saying, oh, look at this
belt. They had their keys hanging off the front of their belt keepers.
Now, the guy, and I don't know if you can see the mouse moving here, but this is the guy in the middle with the bald head is the one whose firearm discharge, right? And he's like, oh, look, he's got his keys in the front of his belt. And then obviously they're showing the two guys that are standing and holding the suspect to the right and left of the suspect, who also have circles around their their keys. And they're stating that, well, they're making the statement here, right? So this is fucking priceless. Like absolutely priceless. Like this reminds me of, was it a Seinfeld, or the magic bullet theory, the magic bullet for JFK? Like this is what this reminds me of.
Seinfeld had the magic spit.
Yeah.
Keith Hernandez spit on them.
In their defense, I also did the same thing. I carried my keys in the front for my cruiser when I was a police officer because we had belt keepers. That's kind of what we used them for. And in the case of the Montville PD, they had either a 6300 series holster or maybe even.
Okay. Here it is. Here's where that is the uncommanded discharge, right?
Yeah.
And they're saying because the officer that is bent over brushed into the officer to the right when he was grabbing the suspect's feet, and you can't see it, but they're saying his keys went into the holster and that's what created the discharge.
A 7300 series holster, and this is a slightly newer version. Again, this is clear and safe.
Again, he's making a statement about the holster that they was used. How do you know?
This is a newer version of said holster. And again, this doesn't close. It's made for a different optic, but you get the idea. It's locked in. It can't go anywhere. But this one, you can actually see it's slightly better. The gap's still there. Yeah. But and to get a finger in there, you'd have to have. You could probably do it if you pushed hard enough, but
no, you can't. No. If you can do it,
show it.
Show it in a real close-up shot. Show everybody that you could be right. Instead, you just insinuate that it's possible, maybe potentially, if you have, flat fingers.
That's what I said a second ago. Like they're demonstrating how possible it is to stick your finger in there and pull the trigger by not sticking their finger in there and not pulling the trigger. Yeah.
When the officer was bending over to pick up the person's feet, you notice as he stands up, if you notice and slow the video down, he actually bumps into the officer to his right, who is holding the suspect's arm, the suspect's left arm. He actually bumps into him on the way up with his holster, up with his body, and the key on the officer to his right, his key was up here on the left side. And if you notice them bump in, what I think happened, or what would make sense for a trigger activation in the holster, is when he was bending over, the key of that officer went into the holster, and as he stood up with the gun, the key twisted into it, and as he stood up and made the gun fire.
Now, at this point, Tim should have obnoxiously laughed in his face.
Yeah.
Like literally like laughed in his face and said the words, "Are you fucking kidding me?"
And this is one extremely specific example of, you know,
Right.
like, so just to be objective, could that be possible? Yes. But this is one very, very, very specific example, and I'm sure that's why they chose to feature that one specific example instead of some of the other ones, like the officer that I've seen the video of the officer getting out of the police car. He puts his little gym bag on the ground and turns around to close the door of his car, and the gun goes off. Like, so
yeah,
that's obviously not a key issue, but yeah, like, okay, like, cool, I guess. But that's
right. So that's what Tim should have done here. Let's see what he does.
Well, and this would also be the perfect time to go, if keys getting into holsters are the issue, then why is this not happening with Glocks and M&Ps and Springfields and
exactly with every other department that carries every other firearm?
Right.
So let's see what Tim says.
Yeah.
Never seen that demonstrated before.
That's not hard to do. That's literally just dropping it in and pulling it. And actually, I did this in my office. Just put a holster on and say, "Hey, why don't you bend over here?" And I was literally just letting my key hang there. We could finagle it in there, and it's terrifying.
Huh.
But it's not just this gun. Now, this is the what people are really not giving a lot of putting a lot of effort
case
into
closed, I guess.
Trying to figure out is it's not a gun problem. I can do it with the Glock. I can do it with ours. I can do it with any pistol with.
Do it.
I mean, of course, do it. And of course, it's not a gun problem, because if it was a gun problem, you'd have to admit that you've got a problem. You are literally
like, so
giving,
then let's roll the video of all the other guns going off like that.
Right. Let's go and see how many lawsuits are being brought to Smith & Wesson, Glock, FN. Springfield. When it comes to police departments, I'm not sure if anybody. I mean,
that's what I was about to say. I don't know of any agencies that issue a Springfield. That doesn't mean they're not. I just don't know of any.
Right. But I've known. I mean, everybody. Mary, who used to be with me with ZERT. She's now a police officer in Naugatuck, and I saw her a couple of weeks ago, and I walked up, and they're carrying the 320s. I was like, oh God, why? And like we started talking about it, but they're like, I guess they were trying to get their departments to carry staccatos. And I'm like, are we really doing that? Like staccatos?
So now, I know one of my friends is a Texas Ranger, and they are carrying staccatos.
Right. And my buddy Jack, who is on the job in Louisiana, that's what they carry. They carry staccatos. And I mean, okay, you've got obviously it's a 2011, and you've got a manual thumb safety, and hammer fired. I mean, sure, but price wise, right? So, but again, Tim's softball answer back was, "I never saw that demonstrated." It's just like,
yeah, I mean, like Tim's reaction and response is like, "Oh well, case closed, I guess."
Right.
So
Instead of laughing hysterically.
Right.
So let's finish this up, and we'll move on to the next part that was just ridiculous.
The tab trigger without a tab trigger, but there is a relationship between a gun with a flashlight attached to the frame. That there is a relationship between that firearm and a holster that creates a gap. And if you have that gap, whether it be a 6300 or 7300. There has to be care taken in the equipment you're carrying, how you're carrying it, and it doesn't matter. Guns don't matter. What matters is the system. Now, with all that said, I will applaud the same holster company for coming out with this guy. This is a brand.
Right. So again, there is the established. It is the holster, and it's the light.
They know it,
and it's the flashlight, and it is not our firearm.
And Safariland is aware of this, and that's why they have fixed their holster to fix this problem with the P320. Yeah.
Right. And he goes on to talk about the holsters for a little bit here. So let's move forward a little bit and see where he's at.
So the next thing, if you want to move it forward to 29 minutes and 50 seconds, I want to point something out.
All right. So we'll start it here, 29:39, and go forward.
Okay.
Hands that people get on them. We can't account for how much training or how much experience that people have. We just don't know that answer. And it's that way with any firearm we produce.
How many P320s have you produced? Guesstimate.
Guess.
Okay. This is the part that you want to talk about, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So we did a podcast a couple weeks ago, or maybe a month ago now. We talked about how many P320s were in the market. And it was we were doing some deduction and correlation, like, okay, how many versus how many problems there are. I mean, I think we said back then there were there was at least 11 lawsuits.
Well, because there's that one document that cites 11 lawsuits. So there's definitely more than 11, because that one document that came out cites 11.
Right. And there were
Yeah.
two people who have been paid, one $11 million and one $2.5 million. Two people, separate, two guns, right? So listen to what they say.
It'd be over 3.5 million.
Over 3 million of them are in circulation.
That's correct. Yeah.
That's a lot of handguns.
Yeah.
The next
What
question.
a lot of people don't understand, not to interrupt, but
No.
of those that we've have out in the market, the claims of negligent discharges or unintentional discharges, they account for, let me see if I can get this right.
So he thinks about it, right? He's got to think about it. He's got to make sure it's right.
Got to make sure he gets it right.
Right.
And it's going to wear me out on this one. 0.00001% of the guns we've made. So basically 1/100%. So it's
Okay.
Out of 3 million.
All right.
So if we do the math on that, that's 0.
Jamie, pull out your abacus
Okay.
and do the math.
Got it. He says 0.00001. So that's 1 to the 5th decimal place. That's 4 zeros with a 1 after it of 3.5 million. That, if you actually do the math on that, and if people are going to call me out for being a dickhead for like nitpicking this or whatever, he said that with absolute certainty, and he needed a minute to make sure it was right. That figure, I use this as, if nothing else, exhibit A that he's full of shit. 0.00001% of 3.5 million guns is less than one gun. That is 1/3 of one gun. That's 0.35 of one gun.
Right.
So that's
Now, what's going
obviously
to
not
right? What's going to likely happen is they're going to drag him across the coals for that comment, and he's going to come back and they're going to make a statement where, oh, he made the wrong number. It's actually 0.0. I mean, we know we can go and see the videos out there of this happening. So
There's
you
definitely
can
more than one.
There's definitely more than one. There's two, because two people have been paid out by him. So you're at least starting with two. Plus the cop we just saw, there's 3. Plus the guy with the gym bag, there's 4. Right?
Yeah.
The guy on the range is that fucking P320? There's 5. So I mean, you're way off, dude. So here, let's continue on and see how he wraps that up.
So hang on, can you pause it 1 second?
Yeah.
Because it's a couple minutes away. It's at 33 minutes, but the absolute best question of the interview is coming up. It's when, like, the best thing that Tim asks him in this entire interview is when Tim asks him, but hang on, what about the P365? That's the best part of this whole interview.
Okay, so let's go. Let's move it forward a little bit here.
So
let's see what he says.
But like I said, the more guns are out there, the potential for claims like this are going to go up. We're familiar with that. We understand that. But 320's got a big target on its back. We've enjoyed a lot of success in the market, and it's easy to pull against the Goliaths.
So you're not the
Goliath, right?
Correct. What he's inferring here is that basically they have more guns on the market and in more people's hands than all these other manufacturers, and that is simply not true either. Like that's another that's another kind of like I don't know if straw man argument is the right word for that one, but that's another logical fallacy. Is he's basically inferring that we're the popular kids. We have the most number of guns that are out there in people's hands right now, and that's why this is happening to our guns more than anybody else. And that is patently false.
Now, I will say that SIG has gained very big popularity over the last decade because of this pistol that they came out with. I'm not going to deny that. I mean, leading up to the P320, they didn't have a striker fired pistol to enter the arena that was owned by Glock, and Smith & Wesson was trying to compete, right?
Yeah.
They did not have it. They had nothing but hammer fired guns. So when SIG decides to come out with a striker fired pistol and jump into the big boy arena, it's a big thing to talk about. They are a big company.
Play this for about another maybe 15 or 20 seconds, because Tim says something else that's that I want to point out. That's
from the point of they were the big guy, or
because he brings up the Beretta M9.
Okay, so let me back it up a minute here.
No, it should.
A big target on its back.
Here we go.
We've enjoyed a lot of success in the market, and it's easy to pull against the Goliaths of the industry. It's just easy. We know that.
Another question I have regarding sear engagement. Okay, so we talked about earlier about the striker's mostly cocked. So presumably, if you didn't have a secondary catch, and if it were,
this is what you were talking about,
theoretically possible for the striker to move forward,
earlier,
uncommanded, it has enough energy to ignite the primer.
Mm-hmm.
So the question I would have then is, with sear engagement, have you guys looked into the possibility that because of the holster firing, that means the guns are being carried a lot in a police cruiser or something like that, it's being bounced around a lot? Is there any possibility in your testing or in your design engineering, circles, is there any possibility that the sear is just slowly walking off and then something finally it just slips and boom?
No.
No. Emphatically no. Shaking his head no. I mean, again, this goes to the point that we've made over and over. Wrong. Say, you know what? We're looking into all of it, but instead they made their line in concrete and it dried, and then they cured it, and then they sealed over it. So there was no changing this. It can't happen.
Right. To your point, I think that's it just makes it a worse look for them to say that. But the more correct thing to say, or I guess the better integrity statement would be, we have thought of that, we have looked into that, and we have not been able to replicate that situation, because as far as I know right now sitting here, as far as I know, that's true. Nobody has been able to replicate it, like the guy hitting the back of the gun with a mallet and making it go off. So that could be a true statement. We are aware that could theoretically be a possibility. However, we have not been able to replicate that, and that would be a true statement. And but for them to just be like, no, boom, can't happen, moving on.
Right. All right. Let's see where we're at here.
P365. And outwardly, it looks very similar to the P320, but I know that there's differences design-wise.
There are some differences.
Now, were there any changes to the trigger mechanism in the P325, the P365? And the reason I'm bringing this up is because it's another very popular SIG product. We hear about these, claimed uncommanded firings of the P320, but to my knowledge, I've never heard of anything for the P365.
This is the best question of the whole interview. This is
now on the video that I've done recently that's up on the other channel, somebody made a comment that there have been issues with the 365. Now, I have not seen it, but going back to your the way the P320 operates, I'd be curious to know if it's the same. So let's.
Well, the best part about this, so this is where you kind of know that, that was a great question that Tim asked. I like the way he asked it, and it pins Phil Strader down, because Phil can't, he has to be very careful, and watch the way he answers this question. He has to be very careful, because he can't shit on the P365, because he actually makes the statement that there are more P365s in the market,
which is not true.
Oh, really? I didn't.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's not true. I look to see those numbers, and it is not true. Now,
okay.
Here's hold on. But here's the only way I'm a little unsure of that. there is the P365, there's the P365 XL, there's the P365X, there's the P365 SAS, there's the P365 X macro. So I don't know if we're calling the P365 that in totality or the original P365 that came out. So again, don't know, but let's hear what
But
Phil
he
has
can't.
to
But
say.
well, he has to be very careful and thread this needle because he can't shit on the 365 because that's the other popular go-to SIG pistol right now,
Right.
and so he doesn't want to say anything that could implicate that pistol as having a problem. But also, he can't say that. Well, we looked at this stuff that's going on with the 320, and then we made these corrections to the 365. He can't say that either because then that would infer that that would be him admitting that there's an issue with the 320.
Exactly.
So this is a very interesting, tactful threading of the needle right here.
Yeah. So let's see what he says.
Listen, I don't want to speak for the number of owners out there, and obviously I don't have visibility of every single claim that's made with or without the P365 or any of our products, but I honestly don't know. It's certainly, if it's happening, it's not as prevalent as the P320, and one could
just before we continue on. When he said that, I don't know why Tim wouldn't have said, hold on, stop. You knew that we were going to talk about this and you didn't pull any information to possibly, maybe they didn't know the questions he was going to ask before. So they couldn't be prepared. But why would you not have questioned that right there? Hold up, wait a minute. You didn't come up with any data? Bullshit. You are the VP of whatever you are. How could you not know?
Right.
Argue because it's not being carried in duty holsters with light bearing holsters.
Right. Yeah.
It's being carried by people who carry concealed a lot, maybe is another potential explanation why you don't hear about it as much with the 365s. And
hold on. So you're telling me that everybody that's had an issue with the P320 is carrying a duty weapon with a holster outside the waistband? Like, no, dude. Like, I'm sorry. No, that's not the case.
And you can't have it both ways, bro. You can't, on one hand, you can't say there is no problem with the P320 period.
Right.
And then compare it against the 365 that I mean, as I sit here right now, maybe different, but I also, like Tim said, I also have not seen or heard any issues with the P365. Obviously, there are going to be isolated end user error issues with any firearm. That is something that is true of any firearm, is that the weakest part of any firearm system is the person using it. But even here, Phil is saying, I think he even goes on to say, well, I carry a P365, right, which also, to me, that's kind of a maybe I'm making too much of that, but maybe that's like a backhanded inference that, like, I would not carry, not me, him, he would not carry a P320 appendix, but he does carry his P365. So I think that was a great question. And
let's see how he wraps
it up. Pressed him a little harder on it though.
Yeah. He should have pushed him.
Yeah.
We have as many, if not more, P365s in the market than we do 320s.
It's a very popular handgun.
Very popular.
Like I said, I carry it. I carry mine appendix many times when I'm trying to go deep concealment, or if I'm going to be in a vehicle a long time. Much easier to get a handgun out if you need it in an emergency while you're seated with a seatbelt on, right, carrying appendix.
Yep.
And there's a lot of people saying I would never carry a SIG product appendix because I don't want to, have an uncommanded discharge into, my nether regions. So,
in those situations, I carry a 365. I carry an appendix carry, and this is a hot take for your reviewers and everything. I used to not carry a striker fired gun and appendix carry. Even when I was carrying my duty gun, I wouldn't carry it that way because I was an old school hammer fired guy. My first gun was an issued revolver.
Okay. I mean that's great, but I guess if you had to take a guess, how many people do you think now carry appendix over 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock?
In my experience, most people that I know and most people that I see and most people that come to my classes that train from concealment are doing it from appendix. Like a vast majority. I think, in recent memory, I can only think of 2 students that were still carrying like 5 o'clock. Everybody else's appendix.
Yeah. All right, let's move it forward and see where we're at here.
As far as rough handling, has been through more than the military's guns have been, and as far as all the environmentals, it's been through very, very similar. Now, there's going to be some layers of difference, but with
this is when they were talking about the rough handling of the firearm, and they're shaking the guns around, and we've heard about the being jostled. Like, I mean, that's like just every gun manufacturer is doing that kind of testing. Like, I mean, what are you talking about? Oh, here we go. We're gonna get into the next part here, where they decided to change their owner's manual. Like,
so that was like really like I out of all my notes, that's the last couple of things but yeah, let's go ahead with that.
On the facts. And don't base it on what you're seeing online or a lot of the claims you're seeing online.
Well, I don't know. Online, you're telling everybody that they can't happen. You're online, you're telling it ends today. These are false. I mean, why should we believe you?
It's unfortunate that we've kind of gotten down this road of, and I know that there's going to be a lot of angry users out there, but we've gotten down the road of, if I make a mistake, whether I know I made it or if I didn't know I made it, but if I make a mistake, it now seems to be the easy path just to, is that a 320? We even heard that on a video. Well, let's blame it on the gun. Let's blame it on the gun and ban it. Instead of saying, well, what's going on here? What were you using? Hey, first, let's get the most important thing out of the way. Are you okay? Is everyone okay?
Right.
Let's establish that first, but then let's actually take a look at the system you're using. What are you using? Is your holster compatible? Is it not compatible? We've seen.
What do you mean? Is the holster compatible? What are you telling me? Like, I didn't have a holster for my P320, so I'm using one for my fucking Canic? Like,
or like your Uncle Mike's holster from Walmart, or
right? Like, I mean, it's everything else. You're right. This is an 8-year-old, not me, I didn't do it excuse for all of it. Like, and I think they're referencing that video where the guy was on the line teaching the ND happens. He's like, is that a P320? He's like, they're quick to jump. Like, is it a P320? Like, come on, man. So that's
a lot of those where people are using incompatible holsters with incompatible guns and so forth and so on.
Hold on. You literally opened this video stating that everybody was using a Safariland holster, and that's what was happening. So is it the Safariland holster or is it the incompatible holster? Make up your mind on which is the bullshit excuse you want to use.
That could create an issue. I'm not saying that's what's creating it. No, but it doesn't help. And I think it's just become an easy thing to point to. So all we ask is that if an agency is thinking about that, or a range is thinking about that, do the same thing you're doing. Call us, ask us questions, come by, visit the.
I find it hard to believe that they are opening the door for a press conference where every media outlet out there can come rip them apart.
Well, yeah. So this is one of the things I had in my notes too, this is the part of the video where he starts repeating, and engaging in a different ways that, we've got nothing to hide. Come by. Like, so if I come and tour the SIG facility and I walk through the guided tour and watch guns being made, that's going to answer all my questions. Like, I can look at your manufacturing process, and that will somehow show me for a fact there's nothing wrong with these guns just because I'm standing there and watching them come off the line. To me, that's another slightly ridiculous argument.
Right. And not to mention, go ahead. Sorry, finish.
Well, and like, this is also the part of the video where, like Hillary Clinton made the big mistake at the basket of deplorables statement. Like that's kind of what his argument turns into here, is like, he also kind of starts saying like, well, also, we're selling a lot of guns. And so, a lot of people buying these guns might be completely dumb people that don't know how to handle a firearm safely. And that's not our problem. But, some of these people, maybe if you don't know how to use a firearm, maybe you shouldn't be carrying it. Like that becomes part of his argument too, is that our guns are being sold to dumb people.
Right. But his statement right there is, if you've got this problem, ask us, talk about it. I'm sorry. Hold on. Wait a minute. March 7th.
Right.
You said everybody that had this problem was anti-2A and they're coming for you. Like, what is it? Is it call you and ask about this? Or if you have this problem, you're anti-2A and you're, like, make up your mind here. Like, now you're backpedaling to say, oh, come talk to us. But you've already demonized everybody that had a problem with it. You can't have it both ways.
That's what I said was one of my biggest issues with the stance they took, is that as a very experienced shooter and instructor and a very responsible firearms handler and all that, like, it just like GBRS said, if I'm standing in front of my class with my arms folded talking to a class that I'm teaching with a P320 in my holster and it just goes off, SIG is not going to have my back on that, is basically what they said. And like, that to me, that was one of the biggest.
Right. And
that nudged me in the direction of not wanting to use my P320s anymore.
Yeah. And so then he says this.
Let's find it. We want you to see.
Because Mac does ask this
surprised at how open you guys are to having people come in to show us everything.
Weird. It's like we almost have nothing to hide.
Really? Yeah. At that point, I would have said, well, again, you told everybody that they were anti-2A if they had a problem, but now you've got nothing to hide after you've had how many months to get your legal team and PR guys available to say what you want to say about keys and flashlights? Come on, bullshit.
Well, I will say, that I was thoroughly impressed with the open door policy, right? And look, I've been critical of firearms. It's my job. I'm supposed to be a consumer advocate.
Oh, there's a camera crew available for Tim from Military Arms Channel to come. I mean, are you shitting me? You're showing people this. You're very critical, Tim. Oh, it's open door policy, Tim. They rolled out a fucking camera crew for you. What do they have? Donuts and coffee waiting too? Come on. Probably. If that's not so staged, that's as staged as the GBRS video. Bullshit. Sorry, me ranting a little bit. Sorry, folks. I guess I'm forgetting that this is being recorded and you guys are going to listen to it. But listen, if you're as enraged as I am, I want to hear about it down in the comments. Guys, we're at an hour and 26 minutes. We've only got a few minutes left on this video that we want to highlight, but we feel like it's important. So that's where we're at. But again, if you're not watching this video and you're listening to it, they've got a camera crew rolled out while Tim is checking out guns at SIG. I'm wondering if this was done after hours or, so this could be all staged and perfect lighting.
Yeah.
But knowing that about me, you still opened your doors to me and let me come in. Now, of course, I carry SIG products. They're SIG products I love. And but of course, I was one of the critics of the P365 when it first came out, things I wanted to see changed. And to your credit, you changed most of those things and things I didn't even bring up. So the products are constantly evolving. And now the P365 is one of my favorite carry guns. But I knew when you guys came out with it, it was going to be a game changer, right? Yeah. It had done things that I hadn't seen done before. And sure enough, the competitors, started copying the recipe.
Yeah.
Right. Literally just chapping it up, chapping those lips up.
Another thing that came up more recently was about the owner's manual. Okay. Yeah. So I just before it came out, I started seeing posts about, oh my gosh, SIG changed its owner's manual. Now they're telling you not to carry your gun loaded.
Right.
And then, and I saw that and I thought, well, that is suspicious. Why now? But then I started looking at some of my other owner's manuals, Smith & Wessons and stuff like that. I'm like, they say the same thing. And in my mind, and I want you to answer the question, but in my mind, that's lawyer speak. They're selling a dangerous product if it's mishandled. And so half your owner's manual in any gun you buy is don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. And I have yet to find a gun manufacturer, and it could be out there. It could happen. I just haven't read every owner's manual. Right. Kind of that bad.
Funny you should mention that.
So he's going to pull out every other owner's manual from every other firearm manufacturer, which is fine. But my question, my question is, why did you change it?
Exactly. This is more of that 5-year-old mentality. This is you catching your 5-year-old with their hand in the cookie jar, and their response is, well, Dad, lots of other kids have cookies. That's not the issue here. And of course, Tim just nods and goes, okay, yep, you makes a lot of sense. Moving on. But the question, while two things can be true at once. Yes, all these other gun manufacturers, their manual can say that, and that's fine, and that's a separate thing. But why did you release this gun with an owner's manual in the year 2014, and then all of a sudden in April 2025 you found it necessary to now change that owner's manual?
Right.
What other gun manuals say is completely irrelevant to that question? Why was this gun
Right.
on the market for 11 and a half years, and now the
Right.
owner's manual needed to be changed? That's the question. I'm not interviewing Phil Strader at SIG so I can have him read to me what Smith & Wesson's manual says. That's not the question.
Right, exactly. So to me, you're like, oh shit, we're being held liable because we didn't tell people this now, and we're having these problems with our firearm, and we can't blame everything else. So we need to at least put this in there. So it's the gun range waiver, right? Like it's like, yep, you know, we're saying
this,
that don't do this, and if it happens, it's on you.
Correct. And then again, this feeds more into the argument of he's basically he's basically saying that the people that are buying SIGs are dummies, and so we had to put this in the manual.
Right. All right, let's move forward.
Uneasy. It's like, oh, here we go.
Not at all. We have nothing to hide, Tim. Nothing to hide. And I love talking about this. In fact, I actually did a video that we're going to be putting on our channel to kind of explain a lot of things we talked about. It's actually going to go through all the channels to get everyone's approval, and we're going to put something out there as well. So because we want people to know the truth, and we have been in a position to where this is a slow moving process, in that when someone makes a claim against the P320, there are legal.
Right. You want people to know the truth. And then he's going to go on a little bit further to talk about legally they've been they've been bound to not respond to the stuff out there because it's all going through the courts. And now they have to wait for a couple of years and sit on their hands. And it's like, you expect us, what are you expecting? Sympathy? Like everyone to empathize with your situation? Oh yeah, we're sorry you had to wait to put out a statement. No, you shouldn't have had to put out a statement because you shouldn't use your customers to beta test.
Right. And I just want to know, like, again, this goes into my reluctance that they have taken such a hard stance, because I just want to know, like all three of my P320s, like I've already said, all have the manual safety. Like, are those good to go? Are they not? But SIG's stance is none of them have any problems. And so and especially after seeing this interview, I just do not trust that at all.
Was there anything else in the video that that you wanted to highlight?
I thought he brought it up back when they were talking more about the holsters.
Military?
and because he talks about how, like, you know, we're the big dog on the market and whatever, and he said, and Phil Strader says something to the effect of you saw this same kind of thing when the Beretta M9 came out. You know, prior to the M9, most people had never seen a Beretta handgun before. And then Tim talks about, like, and Beretta had all those problems with slide separation and all that. And the only thing left in my notes was, like, that issue with the Berettas was an ammunition issue. It's because the military supply system initially was ordering Uzi ammunition, which is P+P ammunition, to put in the Berettas. And so, yes, the Berettas were literally exploding in people's hands because the military was issuing the wrong ammunition with the gun. That was not a gun problem. That was investigated. It was sussed out. Nobody ever claimed that, hey, that Beretta that just blew up in your hand really didn't.
Right, exactly.
So that, again, that's a completely different, like straw man argument that, like, Tim actually spoke up on behalf of SIG, and then he's like, but I'm not defending SIG here, guys. But you know, same thing happened with the M9. Like, that's not the same thing, not at all. And then the last thing I really had to say was that, you know, what's done is done. You know, you can't put toothpaste back in the tube. But, like, you know, you see the big high profile SIG shooters, like, you know, Max Michel and Daniel Horner and Lena. What's their statement on this issue, Chris?
They're not making a statement.
They're not making a statement. They're shutting the fuck up, which is what SIG should have done. But, like, this video did not help anything. And I guess,
listen,
I would say,
and I'm going to tell you, I mean, one of a close friend of mine, and he's an instructor for SIG, is Kyle Lamb, and he's not out there making a statement either about it. You know, I mean, you've got these people like GBRS out there. I mean, I think they're one of the bigger names out there that are really just making videos. And this was their first video that I saw in defense of this situation. You know, they're just still rocking their firearms and talking all about how great the P320s are and how great SIGs are. I mean, I remember back a couple of years ago where they tried to get Mike Glover to convert from a Glock to a 320 and yada yada. I mean, and here's the deal, right? I'm not saying that this podcast is gonna go balls to the wall on YouTube and all of a sudden SIG's gonna reach out to me and Tim from Military Arms Channel is gonna reach out to me because he sees this and he's gonna be mad about it. I'm not saying that. And if they are, I've got no problem having a conversation with either of them and calling out and just saying, like, what's the deal, dude? Like, you can't let them get away. There's nobody that wants to love SIG more than me. I've said that numerous times.
1,000%.
Nobody wants to support the brand more than me. It is not a secret. I've got 3 P320s. I carry a P365. They sent me a freaking rifle and I love the rifle, but I'm not going to give them a free pass because I got that. I wanted to work with SIG. I wanted to be part of that group, to be invited to their events so I can talk about their cool products. I wanted it, but I'm also not going to sit there and, like, wear my SIG branded knee pads and get on my knees for them. Like, I'm not going to do it.
I've made several public statements. It's still up on my Instagram if you want to go through my Instagram, where I have said that the P320, specifically the M17, that is my number 2 favorite handgun. I love the way it shoots. It I perform well with it. Like, I loved everything about it. That, and obviously me making that statement was prior to all this controversy, and now I'm just stuck in this middle ground where I just don't know, is that gun a liability or is it not? And this video with Military Arms Channel did not help anything. In fact, I think it made everything worse, because I think by them constantly beating the drum of, we have nothing to hide and we're being totally open, but oh, by the way, it's the holster's fault, and then it's all this, it's shifting of blame, it's making arguments that don't make logical sense. It's pointing to these extreme outlier cases of some police officer brushing up against another police officer's crotch and his key accidentally went into the holster and just at the right angle and pulled the trigger. Like, those making those kind of arguments and trying to pitch it as that's what the problem is. I don't buy that for 1 second. I think Tim should really be ashamed of this video. And like I said, look no further than the fact that not one single time in the entire video does he ever disagree with anything that Phil says. He never pushes back, and and he literally agrees with everything. And that is not integrity. You
want to know how it would have been actual and factual if there was aggressive moments in the video where emotion came out, because it's staged. Otherwise it's not real. Like, at the end of it, like, Phil should have, like, used Tim's name, right? Like, you always know somebody's mad at you when you, like, they use your name, like, Jamie. That's not the way that's, like, right? It's not just having a normal conversation. You're highlighting it, and it didn't happen. So, folks, listen, we've gone longer on this show than we have in the past, but I hope that you guys understand what we were trying to do here. The next time we do something like this, we'll get it a little bit more dialed in, where we just have the parts that we want to really highlight. But I encourage you guys to go over and watch that video. And like Jamie said, maybe watch it a second time, and provide your own thoughts. Don't just listen to ours. I definitely don't want to be the channel that always talks about SIG, and we probably won't. I made my final video about it over on the main channel. The only reason we're doing this today is because that video came out. I'm sure we may touch on it again if somebody at SIG gets their head out of their ass and decides to take the position that they should have taken about this entire thing. But until then, I don't know. But as usual, guys, thank you for spending some of your time with us. Jamie?
No, I just my final thoughts, like Jerry Springer, like I really want to love my P320. I want to be able to trust it. This video did not help with that, but you know, I think it was last month I shot a Navy pistol match where, you know, it was required that every single shooter in the match, over 100 shooters, all used the M18s. That was the required gun for the match. And it was fine. There was absolutely zero issues at all. And it's things like that I want to trust the P320, not these extreme outlier cases and SIG claiming that there's nothing wrong. So I have finished where I started, where I still don't know if I can trust these guns that I purchased from SIG. So yeah, that's all I got. It's easy to be hard. It's hard to be smart.
All right, guys. Until next time, you stay safe, stay prepared. ZP002